Hi, welcome to Doc Otter Carvings, and today I'm going to take one of these and turn it into a decent whittler, pocket carver. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so as promised, I was going to show you how I took a classic carbon and turned it into a decent whittling knife. So as they come out of the box, they're going to be covered in a lot of oil from the factory. So you can see it right there. There's plenty of oil in there. So you want to take that off, use a little bit of paper towel, just get that off, clean it up. From there, we have to take and reshape this blade. So if you can see if I can get it on camera there, there is a little bit of a tapered lip on the back end, which makes this kind of uncomfortable. Okay, so what I've done with the one that I already did is I took that down, and I'll hold these up so you can see. I took that away probably about 1/16 of an inch. I took that off. So you'll also notice that this blade coming directly from the factory has a very, very fine secondary bevel. Okay, you can barely see it right there, as opposed to the one that I've reshaped the blade here to have more of a convex single bevel. Okay, you can also make this a flat grind fairly easily, or a Scandi, either one, but you're going to have to deal with the grind, which is on both sides. Okay, you see it there and there. So tools that you're going to need are going to be, to start with, you're going to need this knife, okay, or a knife similar. Then you're going to need some way to remove the edge stock off the back of this to make it more comfortable. You don't actually need to have a belt grinder to do that, but it does help, and it does make things much quicker. So what I have is basically just a piece of, I think this is 1/2-inch plywood that I had laying around my shop. And all I've done is I've taken contact spray and put it onto this so that it's flat. Okay, that's one of the keys, is keeping this thing flat as you are keeping the angle the same as you're doing everything. So taking the back, you're going to need some pretty heavy sandpaper. On my belt sander, I actually started with 80 grit, and all I did was take it and do this, okay, over and over again. On the belt sander, it takes a few minutes. On this, it's going to take a little bit longer to do. From the 80, I went to 220, which is actually what is on this side here. And then this side, this I believe is probably 400 on this side. And what I do is I clamp it to the workstation just using a clamp here. And I'll show you later in the video how that's set up. So you'll want to go through a range of grits to get this back cleaned up. That's the first step. The second step is going to be reshape this particular grind here. Okay, and I don't want to just flat grind these. I actually wanted to put a little bit of a round convex onto them. And to do that, all you have to do is pull it back. You just keep pulling, turn it the other way, turn this around, or reposition yourself. A couple of fingers to keep it nice and smooth. And you just keep back and forth, back and forth. That is going to take off plenty of metal with 80 grit. But you've got to come up through the grits. So from there, once I've gone through and I've reset this bevel for this edge, before I start to get that fine burr coming across here, I then move up through the grits, and you can move up to something like a diamond stone. This is one from DMT. This is one of the partial stones. They make these in full flat metal, which they call a dead flat. This one happens to have the plastic underneath. And you're just going to use a little water with this. Okay. And this you're just going to keep going until the previous grit scratches are off. So this is 600. From there, and I mentioned this before, is I have lapping film and a dead flat piece of glass. Okay, this is roughly, I think this is probably 3/8 thick glass, maybe even thicker than that. It's not quite 1/2 inch. These are sold on Amazon. It's about, I'd say $30 for the kit. And it comes with a varying range of lapping film. So while I have the diamond stone as well, basically I have the range on this. I have from here on the blue side, the blue, this is 300 grit to a yellow, or this is technically green, which is 600 grit. And then I turn it over and I have 800 into 18, or other way around, 800 up to 18, or 1200 up to 18. But as long as you run through the grits, what you're doing is removing the scratches from the previous grit. And you can see on the one that I did before, right there, I didn't fully do this whole blade and repolish it. So as I was doing the back, I got some pretty deep scratches on that. They don't affect the carving at all, but they're just cosmetic. And it's just because I didn't take the time to run completely through the grits. On this side, you're going to notice probably with these blades, there are some imperfections in these blades. Okay, and it comes from where they apply this particular edge. They thin out a little bit here. You can see it on this one, on the newer one. Okay, right there. And as you go, you'll see where they ground it. You see the separation right here. That's going to cause little gaps in your edge. And you can see on the one that I did the other day, there's a little bit, but they're not in my bevel. Or they're just slightly in there. And I was a bit in a rush to kind of get this one going and try it out. I think when I do this one here, I probably will take a little bit more time on it. The other thing that I will not do with this one, which I haven't fully completed on this one, is I took down this smaller blade here. I reshaped that one and I just haven't run it through the grits yet. But you can see what I've done to remove the stock there. And that took off quite a bit, actually. And you can see where I started. I'm still at the 80 grit on this one. And for this smaller blade, I'm going probably about a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch to take off that old edge and that old bevel there to get that. And then I'm just going to run through the grits from there. So you'll see it on this side. So all I'm doing with sanding is I want to try and keep that as even as possible all the way through that tip. The tip is going to be finished by coming up the backside, just like you would if you had a broken tip. You've broken the knife tip. There are plenty of videos out there on how to do that. So in this part, I'm showing you why these things hold the blade in place very, very, very well. There are two pieces that come together that hold it in place. Where a normal pocket knife is only going to have one, which makes it pretty sturdy. So what I'm using for a belt sander is this Harbor Freight one here. I want to say this one was probably about 100, 120 when I bought it. I think they're about that right now. It's a 4x48 belt. And all I'm going to do is adjust it left or right to get it as far out to the side as possible. Again, I'm using what I have, and this is 80 grit and 220 that I'm going to be using. Harbor Freight does make a 1-inch belt sander. They made 2 of them. One of them has just gone on to clearance, so you can still find it in some of the stores, and I think they're going for about $50. Most of these belt sanders you can get multiple grit belts off of Amazon, along with the leather strap belts as well. But since it is power sharpening, you do need to be mindful that you don't take off too much material or roll an edge, which you can do really quickly on these things if you are fixing a blade, breaking a tip, things like that. But again, you don't need to use this. You can use just standard sandpaper glued to a board along with a clamp. Okay, so this part, basically, I am just creating a new bevel onto this blade. Again, keeping it cool by dipping it in the water. And I'm taking off probably, I think on this knife, I took about maybe 1/8 of an inch back from that original micro bevel. Just keep it cool. You know, you can see I'm still to be able to touch this pretty well, and I'm cleaning it off. There you can see that eighth that I've added, and I've also flattened it up a little bit just to smooth it out. That'll come into play later. And again, I just moved the belt over to the other side, and I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. All right, now that we've gone through 80 grit and 220 on the belt sander, we're going to go to the 300 grit on the lapping film. Okay, you can do this with sandpaper as well. So I get just a little water on there that helps float the material. And since right now I have scratches on the surface, which I'm smoothing out this blade a little bit, as you can see right here, there is a small depression in this blade. Okay, it's just imperfections from the manufacturing. So I'm going to start by just kind of cleaning that up a little bit. And all I'm going to do is go back and forth. You can either do it this way, lengthwise, or you can circle it. And I'm just going to do that for a little bit till I start to see the metal come up on the lapping film. Flip it over. I'm going to do the other side. And I'm not actually hitting the edge just yet. Right now I'm just polishing the side of that blade. And as I go along, I'll just check. And you'll start to see a difference in the blade. The scratches will start to slowly come off. You can see it there. And I'm just going to continue on that particular one for a little bit. Okay, so right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start hitting on the edge. I moved over to the stone just because I like it a little bit better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it flat, and then I'm going to find the edge of that bevel, and I'm just going to go back and forth and just work it until that burr starts to come up. So at this point, I'm doing the same thing to the other side, and I'm just going to continue to do that until I start to see that burr start to come up and see the little glint of light. And I'm going to run this through the same way all the way up through all those different grits until I get a nice fine polished edge. Now, I don't have to go through any of these extra grits. Once I get to 1200, that is plenty fine of an edge. I just like to have, that polished mirror look. So I do run it through all the way up to the 1800. But you don't have to. So last thing you want to do before I hit it on a buffing wheel is that I want to check the cuts. So what I'm looking for is anywhere where I'm getting that little line coming through that says that I still have some sort of imperfection on the blade. And so far I don't see any. It's cutting fairly smooth across the end grain. You can see there's no imperfections that are coming up. It's nice and smooth. So, okay, last major step is to just hit it on a strop. So, get a little compound on there. And just... Okay, so I've run through all the grits. 80 on the belt sander, 220 on the belt sander, 300 on the lapping film and the stone, 500 on the lapping film, 600, then 800, 1200. And then I went a little bit further and I did 1800 as well. And then I took it over onto a grinder that I have a cotton buffing wheel on and a leather strop wheel. Hit it on the strop first and then took it onto the cotton buffing wheel, and that got off most of the scratches that were left over to just polish up. But you can see that edge is so much nicer now. It's cleaned up. It has much finer edge to it, and it will cut through really easy. I mean, if I make a few cuts, you can see right there how clean that cuts. And that's going across some end grain, which is how you want to test this. So I am going to give this one away, the one that I just made today. I'm going to give this away on Instagram. So just like and share the post, and that'll get you into the drawing, and I will give this away come Friday of this week. All right. Have a good day.